We're going to break down the financial order of operations, which they affectionately call the FOO, and we're going to compare it to Dave Ramsey's Baby Steps. Let's get started. All right, baby step number 1 is to save $1,000 in a beginner emergency fund. Now, some people might think $1,000 is impossible to reach. Some people might not think $1,000 is enough. Dave Ramsey knows that a lot of people in his audience don't have any money saved up in savings whatsoever, and they're living paycheck to paycheck and they have debt. So he's trying to get them to start building a habit of putting some money aside in order to get to that $1,000. And he recommends selling everything you own, getting a second job, eating on rice and beans. Those are what he recommends to get you to that point where you can start putting any money away. But he's trying to build momentum to take into baby step number 2, compared to the financial order of operations step number 1, which is to cover your deductibles. So this is different than just a generic number like $1,000. This depends on your circumstances. So your deductibles covered are including things like healthcare, car insurance, and home insurance. For example, you might have a $500 deductible on your car. You might have a 1% deductible on the value of your house. So if you had a $200,000 house, your deductible would be $2,000. And depending on whether or not you have a high deductible savings plan or not, your deductibles could be, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, or they could be $1,000 if you have a low deductible plan. So your health insurance is going to determine the amount of deductible that you need to save in this step. It could be considerably higher depending on the deductibles you have. This does make sense to me because everybody's financial situation is going to be different. So as opposed to Dave just giving a specific number like $1,000, this is specific to your financial situation, and it also might give you a little bit more security than if you just had $1,000 in the bank. However, if somebody has significant debt and they have no money saved up in the bank, then the idea of waiting to save up, say, a $5,000 deductible for their health insurance might be very overwhelming. They may get discouraged before they even get to step 2. So for that case, the $1,000 starter emergency fund makes sense to get the ball rolling, get that momentum, and then moving on to the next step. It helps from a behavioral psychology perspective on money. And this is where Dave really stands out. A lot of his advice might not be strictly the best mathematical approach to finances and building wealth, but he does focus on behavioral changes and recognizes a lot of people have bad habits related to money. So if his advice can help you start to build good habits, get that momentum, and take the next step, then even if it's not the best financial step mathematically, it might still be the best step for you. So understanding yourself is actually a huge component of whether or not you're going to agree and ascribe to the Dave Ramsey Baby Steps. But I personally do like the FOO on this one because my wife and I actually went through Financial Peace University, which is Dave Ramsey's program where he goes over and teaches the baby steps to you. And baby step 1 of only having $1,000, that actually made me feel quite uncomfortable to know that I would only have $1,000 in savings because we had more than that at the time. So the idea of getting rid of all of it down to $1,000 and then using all that extra money to pay off debt was very concerning to me personally. So the idea of actually having my deductibles covered, that makes a lot of sense, and I like that idea. But again, I was somebody who already had money in a savings account. If you're coming at it where you have zero in a savings account, you might have a different perspective. Now jumping on to baby step number 3, that is having a fully funded emergency fund of 3 to 6 months. Now this 3 to 6 months is your expenses, not necessarily your total budget, because there are things in a budget that include savings and other stuff. And if you're talking about losing your job and needing to live for 3 to 6 months, you're not going to be saving at the same time that you don't have any money coming in. You're just going to be spending what's in that account. So whether you need 3 months or 6 months, that's actually a topic for another video, but the details has to do with how secure your income is, whether you're a 2-income household, and some other details like that. If that's an issue for you that you really want to know more about, put it in the comments. I actually have a video on emergency funds, so if you're interested in that, go ahead and click on the link, and I'll have it in the description. Now the financial order of operations number 4 is also the same thing. They call it their emergency reserves, but it's still a 3 to 6 months emergency fund is what they're essentially saying to do. So they actually pretty much align with the baby steps on this step. Now both of these guys, when they're talking about emergency funds, they're not talking about investing. This should be in a high yield savings account. This should not be invested in the market where it can have volatility up and down. This is money you want to have on hand in cash, so don't invest the emergency fund. Keep it in a high yield savings account. Please put any further questions in the comments, and please subscribe to the channel to get more money on personal finance, retirement, investing, or paying for college. And if you want more on this topic, you can watch the full video here, or you can go to my playlist down there, or to learn more about personal finance, investing, and building wealth, you can click below. And don't forget about my TikTok and Instagram at ThomasKnappFE. Find your path to financial freedom. Stay empowered, and we will see you next time.